Why would a son, who once depended completely on his mother's care, later treat her with contempt or even cruelty? What drives a man to humiliate the very woman who gave him life, protection, and unconditional love? This disturbing pattern is more common than many would like to admit, and behind it lies one of the most complex dynamics of the human psyche, one that Carl Jung and other depth psychologists have explored with brutal honesty. Today, we will dive into the psychological architecture behind this painful relationship, uncovering how emotional fusion, shadow projection, cultural conditioning, and intergenerational trauma all contribute to this behavior. What seems like coldness or hostility is often the external expression of something much deeper: unresolved pain, fear of dependence, and an unintegrated self. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the Mental Dose channel and join our Telegram community, where you'll receive early access to new videos and insights on personal and spiritual growth. Now let's get started. In Jungian thought, the mother is not merely a person but an archetype, a universal image embedded in the collective unconscious. She represents not only nourishment and security, but also total emotional dependence. For many sons, the experience of being mothered in early life leaves deep impressions of vulnerability, helplessness, and need. As they grow into adulthood and internalize cultural ideals of masculinity, independence, stoicism, control, these early emotional experiences begin to feel shameful. The mother, once a source of safety, becomes a psychological threat. She reminds him of a part of himself that he can no longer accept. The result is often rejection, expressed not through physical distance but through verbal attacks, sarcasm, contempt, or even humiliation. This isn't about the mother as she is today. It's about what she unconsciously symbolizes to the adult son. The part of himself that still needs, still feels, still longs. Humiliating her becomes a desperate attempt to reject that inner vulnerability. The tragedy is that the very qualities the son attacks in his mother, her emotional warmth, her concern, her closeness, are the parts of himself he has been taught to disown. And so begins a war not with the mother as a person, but with the memory of dependence she represents. Yet as we'll see, this war is fueled not only by inner shame, but by an emotional bond that was never properly dissolved. Healthy psychological development requires what Carl Jung called individuation, the ability to become a separate, autonomous self. But in many mother-son relationships, this process is incomplete. Whether due to over-involvement on the mother's part or emotional passivity on the son's, the bond remains too tight. The mother continues to see the son as an extension of herself, while the son unconsciously remains entangled in her approval, expectations, or emotional cues. In this fused state, the son cannot achieve real autonomy. He feels suffocated but also guilty for wanting distance. The only way he knows how to assert independence is through aggression. Humiliation becomes a crude form of boundary setting, an attempt to push away the emotional influence of the mother when no healthier model for separation was ever learned. But the paradox is that the more he humiliates her, the more emotionally dependent he remains. He is not truly separated, he is still reacting, still trapped, still trying to win a war that should have ended years ago. On the other side, the mother often unconsciously supports the fusion. She may define her identity through her role as caregiver and struggle to let go. She may blur the line between care and control, between love and emotional leverage. And if she tolerates humiliation in the hope of maintaining some connection, she teaches the son that cruelty is permitted, perhaps even rewarded. This mutual entrapment turns the mother-son relationship into a battlefield where both suffer and neither grows. But the roots of this dynamic lie not only in personal history, but in powerful cultural forces that shape how men are taught to feel and relate. In many cultures, Masculinity is defined through a strict rejection of anything seen as weak, emotional, or dependent, traits traditionally associated with femininity and, by extension, with the mother. Boys are often shamed for crying, discouraged from seeking comfort, and praised only when they show toughness or control. Over time, they internalize the message that emotional needs must be buried. As adults, these men carry a mask, what Jung called the persona, that hides their inner fears, insecurities, and longings. The mother, however, is often the one person who is seen behind that mask. She remembers the boy before the persona, before the performance of strength, and so her very existence becomes a threat to the identity he has built. When she expresses care, asks for support, or simply shows weakness, she inadvertently triggers the unresolved shame he carries about his own emotional past. Unable to process these feelings consciously, the son lashes out. He humiliates the mother, not because she deserves contempt, but because she reflects back to him the parts of himself he cannot face. In this dynamic, cruelty becomes a defense, not against her, but against the self. And this internal split is rarely born in isolation. It is often the product of generational patterns that stretch far beyond a single relationship. Family dynamics don't start with us. Many sons who humiliate their mothers have grown up in households where emotional boundaries were never modeled. Perhaps the father disrespected the mother, or perhaps emotional neglect and criticism were normalized. Children absorb what they see. The son may unconsciously repeat the same behaviors that wounded him, not out of malice, but because they feel familiar, even necessary. Likewise, the mother who endures humiliation may come from a lineage where women were expected to sacrifice self-respect in order to preserve harmony. She may believe, deep down, that accepting emotional pain is part of being a good mother. These patterns, embedded, unspoken, and reinforced over years, are rarely challenged until they explode. What appears to be a personal conflict is in fact a psychological inheritance. As Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Recognizing this legacy is the first step in breaking the cycle. Before we go on, if this video is helping you see these patterns more clearly, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if you'd like to support thoughtful, reflective content like this, you can click the thanks button below. Your support truly makes a difference. Now let's continue. True healing begins when both the mother and son are willing to face the shadow. For the son, this means looking inward instead of outward. It means recognizing that cruelty is not strength, and that autonomy does not require humiliation. It means grieving the childhood needs that were never fully met, and allowing himself to become a man who can hold both strength and tenderness. Jung believed that the integration of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, fear, or deny, is essential to becoming whole. For the mother, healing requires stepping outside the confines of self-sacrifice. She must learn that protecting her dignity is not a betrayal of love, but a foundation for it. When she sets boundaries and claims her worth outside the maternal role, she gives her son the opportunity to relate to her, not as a dependent child or a figure of guilt, but as a fellow human being. This new relationship, based on mutual respect, not emotional entrapment, is only possible when both are willing to release the roles that have kept them stuck. It takes courage to stop reacting and start reflecting, but in that space of honesty, transformation becomes possible. Humiliation is never just about the other person. It reveals something broken within, something that needs attention, compassion, and conscious healing. If you've seen yourself in these words, whether as a son struggling with resentment or a mother suffering in silence, know this. The pattern can end with you, but it begins with awareness. If this video spoke to something real in your experience, I invite you to share your story in the comments. This channel is a space for honest, thoughtful dialogue. and your voice matters. Be sure to subscribe to Mental Dose for more content that goes beyond quick advice and into the deep structure of what shapes us. Because only by facing the truth of who we are can we begin to become who we're meant to be.